describe as a genuinely terrible night in the National Football League. You see the group that we have here for our Football Friday, and in this hour you'll hear from Adam Schefter, from Rex Ryan, from Booger McFarland, and Marcus Spears on what happened last night. If you were just getting up, let's show it to you. There. This was at the very end of a game that had been decided. The Browns and Steelers at the end of a chippy night, and Cleveland had a 14-point lead with 15 seconds left when this happened. Myles Garett taking Mason Rudolph to the ground. Mason Rudolph taking exception. Myles Garett, former #1 pick in the NFL draft, taking off his helmet, and there's the moment. We'll give you a closer look. This probably could have been a whole lot worse, based upon the part of the helmet that caught Rudolph in the top of the head and the fight that ensued. Again, the fallout will be significant. Let's hear from all involved after last night's Cleveland win.
You know, that is embarrassing. You know, what I did was foolish, and I shouldn't have allowed myself to slip like that. That's out of character, but a situation like that where, it's an emotional game, like Larry said, and allow myself to fall into those emotions, with that last play and what happened. I hurt my whole team with what I did, and, that could come back to bite us. And I don't know what kind of repercussions I face, but, got to be better.
Of course, that's not who we want to be at the end of the game. That's not who Myles wants to be. That's not who we're going to be. You have to be able to maintain your composure in times like that, and under no circumstance do we want anything to do with anything like that. I'm embarrassed. Myles is embarrassed. It's not good.
What was your perspective on what happened at the end?
I'll keep my thoughts to myself. You guys saw what happened at the end.
You have no comment about it?
That's exactly what I said. I got no comment.
Have you ever seen anything like that at the end of a game?
No more questions regarding that, because I'm saying nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cowardly, kind of pretty bush league. It's okay though, I'll take it. I'm not going to back down from any bully out there. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
I said it on the field after. It's inexcusable. He knows that. There's no other way around it. He's going to own up to it. He's going to handle it. And this locker room is going to have to come together, because this is going to be a soap opera on the outside, much like the media has portrayed us to be from the whole season. So we have to be a disciplined team. We have to address it. We have to handle it. We have to come together. Instead of feeling like we just won a game that we really needed, we talk about a singular focus and mindset. It feels like we lost. And so it's going to take time for us to realize that we just won this game, even though it's very obvious to the scoreboard. But that's the tough part.
So all that is what happened. Now let's talk about what happens next. Here's our NFL insider, Adam Schefter. Shefty, what's the latest you're hearing in the aftermath of these events last night?
Bill Greeny, the NFL will be headed in this morning to go over the film, not that there's much to see, and to make a decision about how to best handle the case with Myles Garett. And I think everybody's waiting to see what the league does, because there's also the possibility that if they want, Mason Rudolph, the Pittsburgh Steelers, could file charges against Myles Garett for what we now have seen is the closest thing to on-field criminal activity. That was assault last night. That was taking a helmet and violently hitting a player in the head. He could have had a catastrophic result here, and they're fortunate that that didn't happen. You took a helmet, you swing like that. We've never seen anything like this on the football field before. And the last time we saw anything remotely like this, maybe, would have been when Albert Hainsworth took off the helmet of Andre Garrod, stomped on his face. He got 30 stitches, and Albert Hainsworth was suspended for 5 games. Now, that was 2006. The climate change, the difference between 2006 and 2019 in the NFL is night and day. So if it was 5 games in 2006, you could only imagine what the discipline in this particular case will be. I think it's hard to imagine Myles Garett playing again this season, but we'll see what the NFL ultimately decides to do today, and then other people could have legal recourse if they so desire based on what the NFL does. And so there's a lot here to be sorted out, and the NFL is on the way in this morning to sort through it all and to make a decision and to hand down a reaction to what everybody saw last night was something that we've never before seen on a football field.
I don't like putting you in a position where I'm asking you to guess, but is there any way to get a sense of how long it will take the league to make a decision like that?
I don't think there's much to decide here. I think they come in. Look, this is a story that's on the lead of Good Morning America, along with everything else going on in our country. When something like this is dominating the headlines like that, and something like this involves player safety that the NFL is sensitive to, I think we'll get something today. And nobody said that to me. But it's only logical. You think the NFL needs to take the weekend to think about this? What is there to think about? There's nothing to think about. We see the tape. I'd like to know what it is that incited Myles Garett, that led him to basically explode on the field with inexplicable rage. Is there something that Mason Rudolph said? Because if there is, maybe people will say, oh, okay, it doesn't excuse it, but at least we can understand it better. Because what we saw on the field is unimaginable, unthinkable, inexplicable, and that is why, in my mind, the NFL has to react today and react swiftly.
All right, we'll see if they do. And Schefter, obviously, you'll be with us all morning long as we continue this. And I'll bring it out here. Again, this was not anywhere near the Football Friday that we had planned for you today, but these are the things that happened. And all four of you guys played in the National Football League. And so I really want to ask you that to begin with. Just as a player, as a member of this brotherhood, when you saw that last night, Louis Riddick, what was the first thought that went through your mind?
Well, there was a bunch of four-letter words that were coming out of my mouth watching this going, you got to be kidding me what I just saw. Look, I played in an era, I'm a little bit older than the guys here. I played in an era with some of the most vicious players in the NFL, okay? I grew up idolizing Jack Tatum. I remember when Jack Tatum, paralyzed Darryl Stingley. I remember what that hit looks like. I idolized Ronnie Lott. So the viciousness of the game, what happens within the white lines, in the context of the game, I'm all for. I make no apologies for the way the game used to be played. I understand why it's played the way it's played now in the interest of safety. So I get all that. Do not tell me that this you can just wrap into the context of, well, it's just part of the game. Players fight all the time, because that's BS and you know it. And if you're a former player and you try to say that, you know you're lying. This is not in the normal context of the game. What Myles did last night, and look, I understand him and Mason were going at it down there on the bottom of that pile at first, and Mason was pulling at his helmet. We've all seen those kind of fights happen. When a helmet comes off, now all of a sudden understand, you're part of a big fraternity. You're not trying to assault somebody with a helmet. Look at how he swings the helmet. If the crown of that helmet had come down on the top of Mason Rudolph's head, I promise you, we'd be having a different discussion. Because we'd be watching maybe on national TV someone's head split wide open and then bleeding and maybe unconscious, and who knows, maybe something even more unthinkable. So then what would you say? Well, it's just part of the normal course of the game and people get angry? Don't be stupid about this. What Myles did is inexplicable. He does need to sit the rest of the year, and if they take a bunch of his money and make him sit next year, whatever. I don't really care, because you can't do that. If it happens in the course of a game and the game is vicious and people get knocked out, I get all that. Not like this.
Well, and that's where you go. You mentioned during the course of a play versus post-play. And what's unbelievable about this to me is seeing it. Like, the Browns were winning the game. Myles Garett is playing pretty well. I was on the sideline playing defense when Albert Hainsworth stepped on Andre Giroud's face. He comes running off. He's got blood pouring all over the place. He's got a towel, 30 stitches. He did that out of frustration because he was getting worn out. Like, it was a bad day at the office for him, so he lashes out late. Like, you look at the Browns are winning. It's 21-7. And so as you watch this here and you see it, it doesn't necessarily look all that egregious, but it's a 330-pound man stomping on another man's face, post-play, laying there. Like, I understand Myles Garett gets into it. He rips the helmet off. But at that point in time, Mason Rudolph's coming at you. That's where it's got to stop. You toss the helmet down. If you want to get in his face and jaw a little bit, then you might see a fine. Maybe you're getting a little flag. But it's not a situation where someone could be hurt. He got 5 games for that. I think probably the NFL, it's a much different climate 15 years later. You're looking at him. The rest of the season is only 6 games. Any playoffs that could potentially be out there, maybe. But the rest of the season probably does sound about right, given where we're at.
But just embarrassed. You said, how did you feel when you watched it? I just couldn't believe it. It went to another level that it's embarrassing to watch as a former player, but at the same time, like you guys know, it's just when the helmets come off, it's like, all right, it's
what is that? You were telling me this before. Generally speaking, if you're on the field and the helmet comes off, what is the first thought you have?
Especially in joint practices, stuff like that. There's fights all the time, and it's a scuffle, it's a push, it's a face mask grab, whatever it is. Okay, people separate it, and it's usually not the quarterbacks, to be honest, but once your helmet comes off, especially Mason Rudolph, dude, I mean, there's not much else you're going to do right there that's a good decision.
Let me get a thought from you, Jonathan Vilma.
There's nothing to defend there. I'm watching Myles Garett and playing defense. Lou played defense. Bobby played defense. There's nothing that I can say to defend Myles Garett. I can't even say, well, in practice that happens. That never happens. And you know automatically there's a line to cut off when as soon as the helmets come off, you relax because you're talking about someone's son. You're talking about if he's a father. You're talking about if he's a husband. I mean, we're talking about the livelihood of this player, Mason Rudolph, not just for football, but outside of football as well. You can't do that.
Yeah, this goes, and I'm told Schefter has something else for us. Go ahead, Schefter, jump in here.
Well, one other thing I want to add here. Myles Garett is a former #1 overall pick. He's got 10 sacks this season, Greeny. And in the course of a matter of moments last night, he delivered an act that will define him for the rest of his NFL career. In one moment, he gave fans a memory that people will always think of him by. When we say Albert Haynesworth, we think of foot stomping. And from now on, no matter what he does for the rest of his career, people will always remember Myles Garett as the guy that could have killed a football player on a football field by taking his helmet and swinging it like a weapon, like a jackhammer, like a sledgehammer. And that is something that he's going to have to overcome over years. And if he leads the Browns to Super Bowl titles, it won't erase this night. It will always be a part of his resume from this moment on going forward. And the NFL will tack onto it today by handing down what we imagine to be the stiffest suspension in NFL history.
In NFL history. I think that's exactly right, Schefter. Thank you. Let me come over here quickly to you, Bobby, because you mentioned you were involved in the game when we just saw it there with Haynesworth and Gerard. And again, this feels almost unprecedented. As a player, you're not a lawyer. I'm not asking you a legal question. I'm asking you an emotional player question. Do you want to see something more than football discipline done here? I'm reading a lot of stuff on Twitter about getting the police involved, assault, etc. As a player, do you want to see something like that happen?